Panel today, we have Shira Toeplitz, acting politics editor for Roll Call, MSNBC contributor, former radio talk show host Ron Reagan, and MSNBC contributor Robert Trainum, also an assistant dean at Georgetown University. Okay, gang, you've been listening right there, and let's get into this more, talking about what the budget means and whether or not President Obama, in going to the Hill this week, will make the necessary relationships that he needs. We look first here, Ron, at Politico's headline saying a Senate bill won't include Obama priorities. And then we have the talk being the priorities of what the president wants, based on the heels of Paul Ryan saying that Obamacare is going to have to be considered as we move forward. I mean, isn't this just going back and relitigating all the old problems of the past without thinking about where we need to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now?
Yeah, you'd think you have a guy over for lunch, you'd get something nicer from the next day. But Paul Ryan, once again, is proving that he's not a serious person and that his budget is not a serious budget, and that the Republican Party, by inference, is not a serious political party. Repealing Obamacare, as the senator just said, they've tried this now 34 times already. It isn't going to happen. If you're going to get serious, and by the way, Paul Ryan's budget foresees the repeal of Obamacare, but somehow magically maintains the $700 billion in savings of Obamacare, which is a neat trick here. Really, the Republicans are not a legitimate negotiating partner.
Sure, as we talk about what Speaker Boehner has said to Roll Call, he said there's no doubt that as a party we need to do a better job of communicating and engaging with the American people. It seems like they've lost this messaging war back in the election in November. How are they changing their tune now to get people on their side?
Well, they're not changing it that much because they're not really in a position to have a large megaphone. I would argue they've been losing the messaging war since before November, since probably over the last year, when House Speaker John Boehner really started to lose control over his caucus. And that's really the hard part of their messaging, is because they don't have a unified message. They do not have a unified caucus. And on Paul Ryan's inclusion of the repeal of Obamacare in his budget proposal, well, imagine if he didn't include that in his budget proposals. Republicans would be up in arms that the House Republicans were giving up the fight to repeal this measure, which is obviously still very unpopular with that party's base. Normally someone who has been a good brand messenger, Robert, is Jeb Bush. But take a look at his appearance this weekend with David Gregory on Meet the Press.
Who's the hottest Florida politician right now? Is it you or Marco Rubio? Who are we more likely to see in the White House?
Man, you guys are crack addicts. You really are obsessed with all this politics.
I've been called a lot of things.
Marco Rubio is a great guy. Okay, heroin addict. Is that better?
Robert, so why have Jeb Bush reemerge, go on a book tour, show up on any talk show that'll have him if he's not considering running for 2016? And we're the drug addicts here because we're willing to have him on.
Well, we're not drug addicts, but we are political addicts. And look, everyone can figure this out. We can figure out two things. Number one, that Jeb Bush is still a very popular former politician. He obviously has ran statewide. He's from Florida. He has a very popular stance as it relates to some of on education and so forth. Yes, he's thinking about running for president. So is Paul Ryan. To go back to that for a moment, there's a reason why Paul Ryan is doing this. It's obvious, because he wants to position himself far to the right in the Republican primary if, in fact, he chooses to run 3.5 years from now. So that's the real question here. We all know that Obamacare is the law of the land. We all know that the Supreme Court has ruled on this, and we all know that this is going to be the law of the land at least for the next generation or so. So this is not about policy. This is about politics, and the more we talk about that and just frankly just be real about it, the better off we are. And then secondly, and more importantly here, I respectfully disagree with Shira and with Ron Reagan in reference to the messaging war here. I think the Republicans have done a very good job of keeping this president on the defense from a financial standpoint. Every 3 months we're talking about the fiscal cliff. Every 3 months we're talking about the financial crisis, and the president has tried to go around the country in the campaign-style way to talk to the American people, and that hasn't really worked. His polling has slipped a little bit. So I think the Republicans actually have a stronger hand than what we really realize here.
All right, well, let's talk about the Bush brand, because you talk about the Republican hand here. I want to play more of Jeb Bush talking about having to overcome his dad and his brother if he were to go ahead with a presidential run.
I don't think there's any Bush baggage at all. I love my brother. I'm proud of his accomplishments. I love my dad. I am proud to be a Bush. And if I run for president, it's not because of something in my DNA that compels me to do it. It would be that it's the right thing to do for my family, that the conditions are right, and that I have something to offer.
Ron, so Jeb Bush is certainly a likable political figure, but does he walk a tightrope with the Bush brand?
Yes, he does. I mean, the Republican Party, messaging positive, messaging negative, whatever you want to say about their messaging, they need to reform themselves. They need to kind of pull their act together here, and they need to move forward. And I think Bush 3.0 is a bad way to move forward. And frankly, I think Jeb Bush generates a lot more excitement inside the Beltway, there on the East Coast, and the kind of media corridor, than he does anywhere else in the country. Out here on the West Coast, people are not holding their breath, waiting to hear what Jeb Bush is going to do.
It's just us in the media. That's just it. Just us political addicts. Our power panel today. Thank you, Shira Toeplitz, Ron Reagan, Robert Trainum. I appreciate it.